History is a tale told by the victors. But who exactly are these victors? Barbaric warriors, mad kings, and greedy traitors? Perhaps most of what we call history is nothing more than fables created by those glorious conquerors. This is the true story of Countess Erzsebet Bathory, and it is not as history remembers her. Countess Erzsebet Bathory was born in 1560 into one of Hungary's most illustrious families. She was promised to Ferenc Nadasdy at birth, and from a very early age, Erzsebet learned to be fearless, curious, unfeeling, and pitiless. At 15, she married Ferenc Nadasdy, and soon after, her mother passed away. Erzsebet managed her estate with unmatched skill, and before long, many noble families, from Bohemia to Poland, were indebted to her and her husband. She even lent large sums of money to the king himself, and bore Nadasdy 3 children. Their first child was born 10 years into their marriage. Erzsebet spent very little time with her husband. The reason was simple. Nadasdy was a feared commander, fighting the Ottomans on the front lines, and the war was not going in Hungary's favor. The Ottomans had slaughtered and enslaved nearly half the population, and Nadasdy's men were among the few warriors the Turks truly feared. Despite her husband's absence, Erzsebet founded a hospital for the poor, though many of the wounded who entered never came out alive. She was a devoted Protestant and held to several beliefs considered heretical at the time. Her trusted associate, Darvulia, whom many whispered was a witch, managed Erzsebet's wealth with such brilliance that some believe she knew the secret to making gold. Together, Nadasdy's military reputation and Erzsebet's intelligence and unbending will made them one of the most feared and respected families in all of Hungary. One day, Nadasdy returned from the frontier and demanded his pay from the king. Soon after coming home, he began complaining of a severe headache. Erzsebet instructed Darvulia to prepare a healing potion for him. However, after drinking it, Nadasdy was dead by morning. The only strong opponent of the Sultan was gone, not on the battlefield as a soldier of his caliber deserved, but in his own home. With her husband dead, Erzsebet quickly took her children to live with her aunt in Vienna. In Vienna, she met Count György Thurzo, who soon asked for her hand in marriage, but she refused him. Later, at a welcome party, she met his son István, and the two were instantly drawn to each other. It was love at first sight, as though their fates were destined. They shared a passionate kiss on the dance floor and made love that same night. Over the following weeks, their bond deepened. They exchanged love letters every day and continued their secret affair whenever they could meet. Just when it seemed that their love was written in the stars, Count György Thurzo forcefully arranged for his son to marry a noblewoman from the Kingdom of Denmark, without giving Erzsebet a chance to know or protest. Heartbroken and alone, Erzsebet spent her days in deep sorrow, weeping endlessly in the quiet halls of her castle. The only visitor she received was Count Dominik Vizakna, a man who admired her deeply and sought her company whenever he could. But after a few weeks, Erzsebet's sadness grew unbearable. She became convinced that István had abandoned her because she was growing old and losing her beauty. One morning, in a fit of rage and despair, she struck her maid. A few drops of the maid's blood splattered across Erzsebet's face. Perhaps it was the morning light reflecting off the mirror, or perhaps it was something else entirely. But when Erzsebet looked at her reflection, she saw something that would change her life forever. Can you guess what happens next? As always, pause the video and take a wild guess in the comments below. For reasons known only to her, Erzsebet became convinced that the blood of the young maid had made her skin appear younger and fresher. Obsessed with this belief, she ordered that the same maid be cut each day so she could wash her face with her blood. After some time, the maid died, and Erzsebet's madness deepened. She had a cage built in the castle and demanded that every young virgin girl in the region be brought to her. Their blood would be drained and used to preserve her youth. Only one person, Darvulia, dared to question this horror. When Darvulia refused to take part in the killings, Erzsebet gave her a cruel choice: leave at once or face the same fate as the other girls. The murders began to multiply at a terrifying pace, reaching nearly 10 victims each month. Many of the bodies were never buried, instead thrown carelessly into the woods surrounding her castle. Erzsebet kept a secret diary of every girl she had killed, while Dominic Vizakna remained by her side, slowly feeding the darkness that had taken over her heart. Then one night, Dominic betrayed her. He stole her diary and vanished without a word. Enraged, Erzsebet swore that he would never set foot in her castle again. That same night, she received word that Darvulia had died. Darvulia left behind a letter, and in it, she reminded Erzsebet that aging and death are natural gifts of life, and no amount of spilled blood could ever change that. Erzsebet wept bitterly upon reading it. Overcome with guilt and loneliness, she ordered her carriage to take her to Vienna to see her children. But the journey did not go as planned. On the way, her carriage was attacked by an angry mob, people who had learned of the countless young girls she had killed, as well as the priest she had murdered for trying to alert the king. Terrified, Erzsebet turned her carriage around and fled back to her castle. After some time, she ran out of young virgin girls to kill, so she ordered her men to travel long distances to faraway towns and kingdoms to bring her more victims, even if they were of noble birth. It didn't take long before word of her crimes reached her children in Vienna, and even the king of Hungary himself, who immediately sent his men to investigate. But here's the twist. If she was found guilty of witchcraft, all her lands and estates would be taken by the king. That meant every debt the king owed to her and her late husband would be wiped away in an instant. That outcome would have been good news for the king, but terrible for Count Georgi Thurzo, who was secretly hatching a devious plan of his own to seize her properties. He devised a cunning yet brilliant scheme. Instead of having Erzsebet convicted of witchcraft, he wanted her to be found guilty of multiple murders. This way, she would be forced to surrender her properties to him. The king's debts to her family would be cleared, and her children would inherit her castle. It was a plan he had been nursing for a long time, and it was Count Georgi himself who had sent Dominic to get close to Erzsebet and steal her diary. Later, he sent Istvan to her castle under the guise of investigating the murders. When Istvan arrived at the castle, the first thing he noticed was the horrible stench hanging in the air and the swarms of flies buzzing around the place. After they ate, Erzsebet confessed everything to him and admitted that she still loved him. They made love that night, but deep inside, Istvan knew she was no longer the woman he once loved. Perhaps if he had not been whisked away to Denmark years earlier, things might have turned out differently. Maybe she wouldn't have become this monster that now stood before him. But fate had already played its hand, and now he had to fulfill the duty that brought him there. When his investigation ended, Istvan could no longer deny the truth. Erzsebet was indeed a murderer. Soon after, she was arrested and brought to trial. But calling it a trial would be generous. It was nothing more than a farce. Count Georgi had her servants tortured until they confessed to every accusation, and once they did, he ordered them to be swiftly executed. As for Erzsebet, She wasn't even allowed to be present at her own trial. She was sentenced to spend the rest of her life in complete isolation. Her punishment was as cruel as her crimes. She was sealed inside her own room, the windows and doors bricked shut, with only a small opening left where food could be passed through. And so, the once powerful Countess of Countess was left alone in the darkness, trapped with nothing but her thoughts. A few days later, she realizes that love has always been her greatest weakness, and that age and death come for everyone, just as Darvulia had written in her letter. With nothing left to live for, she bites her own hand and slowly bleeds to death. Days later, her body's found, and the most powerful woman in Eastern Europe at the time is buried in a shallow grave without even a coffin. History, as they say, is always told by the victors. It remembers Erzsebet Bathory as a bloodthirsty monster who preyed on young girls, yet forgets that she was also a woman destroyed by love and betrayal. And that is the tragic story of Erzsebet Bathory. For more interesting recaps like this, be sure to check out the other videos on our channel, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with your friends.